Olá, pessoal, boa noite. Tudo bem? Estamos aqui começando, estou sozinho hoje, né? O meu parceirão, meu amigo Cristiano Linux bem não pôde vir participar comigo e estou eu aqui apanhando um pouquinho, né, da ferramenta, né? Então, estou fazendo aqui está em, espero que esteja em live, isso. É, Deixa eu checar, vou checar, se vocês me permitem. Uh, Continuous Delivery, Rio. Paulão aqui tá. Opa, acho que tá dando certo. Follow. Então tá dando certo. Então, pessoal, tô aqui em sozinho. Vamos começar hoje fazendo nosso encontro, né? Vai ser o segundo encontro. O primeiro a gente teve um problema técnico, né? A gente fez uma introdução, mas tivemos um pequeno problema técnico. Ô, Ronaldo, boa noite. Obrigado, meu amigo, está aí junto com a gente. E no primeiro encontro a gente teve um probleminha técnico de fuso horário, etc., e a gente não conseguiu ter a palestra, mas graças a Deus a gente vai continuar, vai dar tudo certo, e hoje a gente vai ter o nosso segundo encontro, e nesse nosso segundo encontro a gente vai se tudo correr bem, né? Espero que corra bem. Nós vamos ter hoje uma palestra da Tiffany Jatia. Ela é technical evangelist, evangelista técnica de uma empresa chamada Harness, que tem uma plataforma de CD espetacular também. Ela é ambassador da CD Foundation e se Deus quiser tudo correr bem, hoje a gente vai conseguir ter essa grande palestra da Trace, né? Peço desculpa a vocês por novamente por alguma dificuldade. O grande mestre dessas ferramentas aqui é o Cristiano e ele hoje não pôde vir, então hoje ele não pode nos ajudar aqui, né? Tá junto conosco, na verdade, ele tá off hoje. Mas eu vou tentar fazer o máximo possível, né, o que tiver dentro do meu alcance, para que funcione tudo tranquilamente, tá? Vou só revisitar aqui uma questão, vou fazer o screen share aqui, só revisitar uma questão aqui, que é o que é a CD Foundation, né? Vamos olhar aqui o site da CD Foundation. Cadê? Cadê? Tá aqui. É esse aqui. Opa, cadê? Tá aqui. Então vamos fazer aqui, ó. A CD Foundation, né? É uma fundação que foi criada em 2019, né? A gente faz pouco tempo, fevereiro do ano passado, e vou mostrar aqui para vocês, né? Ela foi criada com o intuito, né? O charter aqui. Então, perdão, em 2019, fevereiro de 2019, ela foi criada e cujo objetivo é fazer, né, ser a missão dela, né, ser uma fundação que vai criar as condições, né, para, de uma forma aberta, igual a Cloud Native Computer Foundation, porque é também uma fundação ligada à Linux Foundation. Então, de, de uma forma de governança técnica de projetos, de uma governança aberta, open source, poder desenvolver as práticas de continuous delivery e também apoiar os projetos open source que estão nessa seara do continuous delivery. Então, que projetos são esses, por exemplo, né? Vamos olhar os projetos principais. A gente tem aqui o Jenkins, né? Vou clicando aqui para a gente poder olhar. Tá aqui, ó. A gente tem Jenkins, os Jenkins, temos o Spinnaker e o Tecton, né? São os 4 projetos já, e temos o projeto Screwdriver, que está incubado. É uma fundação que procura ter grupos de interesse, como a CNCF, e esses grupos de interesse fazem estudos, né, específicos, né, sobre alguns temas, segurança, machine learning, dentro do conceito de CD, né, de DevOps, né, se você migrar um pouquinho e colocar machine learning ali, ver como é que é o processo de machine learning nessa seara. Então, a gente tem aqui uma fundação que visa, né, trazer esse lado de entrega contínua com as ferramentas o quanto antes, né? Quer dizer, perdão, dentro do processo de desenvolvimento ágil e etc. Então, eu agora vamos esperar só um pouquinho, porque a Tiffany ainda não chegou, eu já passei o link para ela, só aguardando mais um minutinho, né, para que ela possa chegar. Espero que eu não tenha nenhum problema hoje de fuso de novo, né? Creio que não vou ter, mas vamos torcer. Deixa eu contactar ela aqui de novo. Vamos aguardar, estou chamando ela aqui de novo para ver se ela consegue entrar, para que a gente possa passar a palestra para ela. Voltando aqui. Ah, sim, ok, ela já está entrando aqui, já está vindo. Vai dar tudo certo hoje, se Deus quiser. Deixa eu tirar parar esse stop sharing aqui, voltar para o nosso pro sharing do que é a nossa palestra, né? Então, Continuous Delivery. Olha, esse é através do Meetup, né? A gente criou um Meetup, que é o Continuous Delivery Rio, né? E esse é para onde a gente está guardando, né? Mantendo. Opa, chegou aqui a Tiffany, deixa eu colocar ela. Hi, Tiffany. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Paulo. Hi.
Oh, so proud to have you together with us in our beginning meetup about continuous delivery, based on continuous delivery foundation concepts, and have you to joining us to talk about continuous delivery platforms will be amazing. So thank you so much for your time, and the show is yours. So you can introduce yourself better than I made an introduction, but you can introduce yourself better than I. And I'm being in backstage, see your presentation, amazing presentation. Thank you so much. Just one thing. We are talking from Brazil. Is the CD.RIO? It's because I'm living in Rio de Janeiro, but this meeting are being transmitted delivered for all Brazilians through our channel, and will be recorded, and everyone will be able to see after this presentation in time. Okay, so thank you so much, and go ahead.
all. My name is Tiffany Jakja. I'm a technical evangelist at a startup called Harness, and we're really excited to be a part of the CD.RIO developer meetup because we really do love talking to other developers and other people in the CD space to help with better software delivery. So if you don't actually know anything about Harness, that's totally okay. We're actually just another vendor in the space, and we help provide a software delivery platform. So we help developers and DevOps teams ship code and deliver faster and better without breaking things. And so that's actually what this presentation is about this week. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can use different software delivery platforms to help build continuous delivery capabilities. And so we're just going to talk about different capabilities that you can help build out. And I do definitely want to keep this interactive, so feel free to ask questions in the chat. Would love to make this a conversation and just really interact. I know the past couple of events in the space, like virtual events and stuff, can sometimes be really isolating, especially when you don't get to chat with people and meet people face to face. So I definitely want this to be interactive and exciting and really enjoyable experience and some time for you to learn more about continuous delivery and how it works and how you can really scale it out with different platforms today. So I'm about to share screen here. Just gonna share screen so that you can see my presentation. And I hope that you can all see it now. Let me know if you can't. But we're just gonna get started.
Yes, it's okay. It's showing.
Awesome.
It's sharing.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So like I said, today we're going to talk about continuous delivery. And I always like talking about, kind of just setting like expectations around what is continuous delivery, right? And when we talk about software delivery, we always talk about getting things into production or getting things into the hands of users, right? But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if what we get to get out there for users isn't useful for them, isn't valuable, and we didn't do it in such a way where we could repeat it multiple times and continue to add value at each iteration. And so when we talk about continuous delivery, there's a lot of different parts to it when we think about it, right? There's what we deliver to the users, right? How we deliver it safely, how do we do it quickly, and how do we do it sustainably so that we can do this all the time and we can do it for other teams and we can learn from the last deployment so that we do things better this time around, right? And so it's really cool to be in the space because, we have different teams and different people serving in cross-functional teams to deliver something to our customers, to deliver something to a production environment. And it doesn't matter if you're a developer, it doesn't matter if you're in operations, in security, in DevOps, as an SRE, whoever you happen to be, you still have a stake in software delivery. And so learning anything about software delivery is really applicable and really helpful for anyone in the space. And so I hope that this presentation can help give more insights into it. And so I also want to level set on CI versus CD, because we always talk about CI/CD as kind of this one big concept, but there's a lot of aspects that go into software delivery. And so when we think about CI/CD, I think that we have to think about it in different components, right? The tasks that we do for continuous integration are very different from what we do for continuous delivery. And the mindset is a little bit different too. And so it's really important to kind of think about that. In continuous integration, we essentially want to think about how we integrate changes into our code base, right? So sometimes we can have different features. Sometimes people are working on different things. Some things are ready, some things aren't. How do we keep track of that? How do we build a workflow so that when a new developer or someone else wants to work on something, that we can ensure that all these changes are being integrated continuously, right? And that they make sense and that they don't break anything. And maybe if they do break something, we know about it. Everybody on the team knows about it and people have visibility into it. So that's the nutshell in continuous integration, right? A developer has some code, they make some changes, they commit it, push it into a repository, and then that triggers the continuous integration process. Sometimes you'll have a CI server or some type of CI tool, which helps automate building it, testing it, running unit tests, right? And then packaging it up so that we can deploy it to an environment. So at the end of a continuous integration step, we actually have something called an artifact. And the artifact is ready to be deployed. It can be a WAR file, it can be a jar file, it can be a container image, something that's ready to be deployed. And then when we talk about continuous delivery, right, we have this artifact, and now we just want to figure out, where does it belong, right? Do we want to put it in a Kubernetes cluster? Do we want to put it in Google Cloud? Do we want to put it in a AWS instance? Where's the home for this? Where is the target environment? And so when we ask, like, where is the target environment? What is the cluster? What is the place where we want to deliver this? That's when we talk about infrastructure provisioning, right? How do we provision infrastructure? How do we provision an environment where our code can live? And so people will use Terraform, CloudFormation. There are different ways of automating this process. But again, it's part of continuous delivery, right? If we don't have an environment, a target production environment, an environment where someone can actually pick up that code and use it, doesn't mean anything. We didn't deliver anything. So that's just something to note. And then another part is change management. So how are we managing these changes, right? Can anyone deploy to production? Can anyone deploy to a QA environment? Who gets to choose? Who gets to manage these changes? Who can see those what we're changing? Is it visible? In some cases, like change management, infrastructure provisioning, they're not part of the CI/CD pipeline. They're manual tasks that we do through scripts, through engineers who play them, who run them. So it can be really difficult when it's not part of your pipeline. And traditionally, like, we've seen a lot of people work on continuous integration, and it's easy, it's good, it works. Their CI pipeline works, right? They have code commit, they commit code and then build tests. You know what happens. You can do container vulnerability, you can do image scanning. You have this artifact that's ready to be deployed. But we don't really know what to do in the continuous delivery side of things, right? When we go to deploy something, do we have some type of release strategy? Is it just a basic deployment? Do we want to use canary or blue-green deployments? There's a couple of different release strategies, and some of them are progressive, right? Some of them roll changes out slowly to different customers, and you get to pick and choose. And it's a safer way of deploying because, maybe you make a big deployment and, if something goes wrong, that can impact your entire customer base. So if you don't want to impact your entire customer base, maybe you decide you want to do a canary deployment or a blue-green deployment. So those are some interesting things to think about, right? And then also, like, anytime you do a deployment, people you have to make sure that it works, right? And so commonly people will spend 24 hours after a deployment looking at their looking at logs, looking at metrics, trying to see, like, is our service still working? Can we verify this? If it's not working, how do we roll back? Do we have a rollback plan? These are all things that we talk about when we talk about continuous delivery. And when we talk about building it into a huge ecosystem and building out additional capabilities, you also have to think, well, what are we doing around managing different pipelines, right? Are they repeatable? Can one pipeline work for someone else? Can we have multiple pipelines? How does this work in an organization where we have a lot of teams and we have microservices and, maybe the way we deploy applications is slightly different for each one? How easy is it to configure a pipeline, a CI/CD pipeline, and use it for other services? Because if it's not easy, then we're spending a lot of time in this process, right? Maybe we're spending 2 weeks to onboard an application. And when we have a lot of applications, that can be a full-time job. And managing pipelines, like, that can be a waste of time too. If it's not your only job, maybe you're also a developer, or maybe you also do operations work. It can be really hard to, if you also have to manage your CI/CD processes as well. And so that's why I really like talking about platforms, because it provides all of these capabilities out of the box for you, especially when you think about, like, overall visibility of the pipelines, different dashboards, different reporting mechanisms to track like how are we growing over time? How is our deployment rates? A lot of people talk about accelerate metrics, DevOps metrics, right? Capturing delivery health. And this can really help you if you get out of the box visibility into specific applications, specific teams, who's deploying what, when, where, why, how often. Can be really helpful if you want to pick up new practices, if you want to say, well, maybe we don't have enough technologies, maybe we don't have enough automation, and this is where we should invest our time. You can really make data-driven decisions. And then again, there's also the aspect of security and auditing. So a lot of organizations, they have to be able to answer what got deployed, when, and where, and why. And so building policy as code, building security into your development, your software delivery, and your continuous delivery pipelines is really important. And so these are just some of the things that we think about when we talk about continuous delivery. And I really like this map because it really does show you all the things that you should be thinking about. And it's not really common to hear about these things, but there's a lot of pain points within this process too. And maybe you solve certain parts of continuous delivery, and there's still others that you're working on. But that's why I want to, for the purposes of this presentation, also talk about the different areas of CD that you may want to focus on, and why you may want to focus on them, right? So that's just something also to think about. I can't actually see the questions screen, so I'm just going to take a pause. Do we have any questions?
Not yet, Tiffany. Can you go?
All right, awesome, great. Again,
Thanks.
feel free to ask any questions. I'm more than happy to answer them.
If you have received any question, I will pass it to you. I will. Okay, no problem.
Awesome.
Let's go.
Yes, let's continue on. So to help with a lot of these conversations, Harness actually interviewed over 100 different companies. And these were potential prospects of Harness. These were actual customers, a good mix of different companies over different industries to kind of figure out what is the standard of continuous delivery today? How much time are people spending on average, or in the average use case related to continuous delivery? And so we actually captured a lot of observations and key challenges. And so I have a QR code and a link here, so you can check out that report. It gives you a good idea about what's standard and what isn't. And that can always be helpful if you're trying to make a case for using a particular technology, or even thinking about what it means to invest in continuous delivery. So you can see here that some of the major findings is production deployment costs on average cost about $1,500 per deployment. That's actually pretty high, and they calculated this number based off of how many people were involved in a production environment, for how long, a production deployment, and for how long. And in the median case, we have about a third of that. And then in terms of change failure rate, about a 10% change failure rate, deployment frequency of about 10 days, lead time of about 8 hours. So deployment lead time is from start to end. How long did it take to do a deployment? On an average, it was 8 hours. And then per application, the cost of a deployment. So you can see here, some of these numbers are really high on average. And so in the worst case, you could be spending a lot of money. And in the best case, you could be doing really well. You could be deploying every 4 days, which is, not bad at all. Or you can even be doing it daily or on demand. So they're just different. People are in different spectrums, right? There's some people who are highly performant. They've solved for continuous delivery. There's some other ones that are getting there. They know about the continuous delivery capabilities. They're onboarding it. They're enabling their people to do better. So it's just something to note that people are in different spectrums. And then also in terms of the worst and the best case, like, it's an iterative process. You can't solve for all of it right away. So the main thing is to figure out where are your biggest pain points and tackle them slowly. And so this report helps people because, it breaks down the different components. It also shares like the common tools that people will use, the best case, the worst case, the different observations, the different key challenges that customers admitted. These are real testaments to the pain points that people have. And these are the different components of that report. So we talk about like the challenges around the build process, the tools around the build process, how many people are involved. We also talk about the deployment pipeline. We talk about testing and quality assurance. We talk about governance. We talk about production deployments and verification and rollback. So again, some of the components around continuous delivery, right? And I wanted to share one of the findings that we had. So this is just like an example of a summary that we have here. Deployment pipelines and how people kind of treat them. What we actually saw with our customers was that before using a CD platform, a lot of them actually had custom scripts. And they would script their pipelines using a CI server. So like their Jenkins server, they would use their Jenkins server to do continuous delivery for their applications. And one of the challenges around that was just like every time an application changed or you had to onboard an application, you'd have to rework those scripts, right? You also have to figure out like how you want them to integrate with other technologies that you have. So like your change management tools, your ticketing tools, can you put your Jira workflow into your CD pipeline? If you can't, then, maybe you want to think about how that works. And so, when you are using a CI tool, you have to work really hard to change it, to modify it, add configurations, and then managing dependencies isn't easy, right? Managing plugins is not easy. You have to upgrade them. You have to make sure that they're continually being supported. You have to figure out like you have to pass it through a security team. You have to make sure like it's okay to add this plugin. Not everybody has access to the plugin either. Sometimes, depending on your organization, you may not even have access to the actual server. So you have to put in a request and everything. And so on average, we saw people spend about 66 work hours to create a new pipeline for a new application. And on average, there were 3 full-time engineers managing those pipelines. So across a work week, you would take about a week and a half, and then you would have 3 people trying to manage that pipeline. And it can be really hard also to debug failures. So like if a build breaks, it's hard to figure out what caused that failure. There was like no good dashboards. It was hard to make templates out of the pipelines, and then also figure out how to build pipelines for microservices. So maybe you have 5 microservices, and then you need to deploy one before you deploy the other ones. Building custom pipelines to make sure one service gets deployed after another was difficult. Like it took them it was a challenge, and people had to think about it. And so in the best case, people take 1 minute to onboard a new application. In the worst case, they spend 480 hours working on that. And that's really hard for organizations that just want to deliver value to their customers. Like waiting 2-3 weeks, 2 months to onboard a new application so you can deploy it and give it to your customers is a really long time. And so we actually found also a couple of different anti-patterns. And like some of the anti-patterns is like it takes a lot of people to deploy that application. If it takes a lot of people, then everybody has to know the process. Everybody has to know what's going on. You have to keep track of it. Maybe you're waiting on one person, but that person doesn't know anything about the deployment, so you have to keep them updated. Maybe like you have a lot of people working with different scripts, custom scripts. Like if you want to do a canary deployment, someone has to run a script. or you want to provision an environment. Oh, someone else from another team has to run a script. When you depend on a lot of people, that can make it take a long time for delivering that software. So that's just something to note. And then also, when you don't have any templates or reusable pipelines, that can be really difficult as well, because now you have to start the process all over again for another application. And it can be really hard. Like, say, for example, you're doing a cloud migration. You want to go from on-prem to public cloud, like to AWS. If you don't have any templates or pipelines that you can reuse when you change environments, that means you have to start the process all over again. And like I said, like, manual orchestration of scripts, it can be really difficult, because, how do you know if someone ran the script or not? What happens when that person leaves and they know everything about the script, but no one else does? So it's a lot of risk there involved in the continuous delivery process. So it's also something to note. And it's like, in the past we were thinking like, oh, we are only going to deploy to public cloud, Amazon EC2, or oh, we're only going to deploy web servers, web apps, so it doesn't matter. But like, as you see, like 2013, 2014, 2015, now we're talking about Kubernetes. Like, you need to be able to scale no matter what environment you want to deploy to, or no matter what tools you want to use. And so one of the things that helps kind of scale better for the future is having a CD platform. But one of the things that you have to consider is like, what is the cost of building that platform, right? For a lot of people, on average, this was like 3 to 4 engineers 1 year, and then also maintaining that platform. So for some people, that's really just not viable. We can't hire 3 full-time engineers a year to go and build, and also wait a year to go build a continuous delivery platform or a continuous delivery solution. And sometimes it takes that long, right? So one of the things that we help try to solve for is some of those things. And there are a lot of tools that exist in the space today. Harness is just one of them. GitHub, GitLab, CI/CD is another one. It's just something to think about, is like, how long is it taking you to onboard new services every time you have a new service? On average, like, our customers, it takes them 2 hours to add a new service that they can deploy. It can be a microservice, it can be a series of microservices. It can be AMI, Amazon Machine Images. It can be infrastructure, but it only takes them 2 hours to onboard that new service. And then 2 hours, I can go start deploying to any environment that I want. Versus, what if it takes me 2 to 4 weeks per service? Another thing to think about is like, okay, I have a change approval board. How am I giving them visibility to do that? With Harness, you get like you get automated ticketing. You get a platform where you can approve deployments, and then it'll like pause, wait for approval, and then once it's approved or canceled, it'll fail or pass that build, and you can move on. Also provides visibility into your application deployments. So, if governance and compliance is a really big thing for your organization, just think about like, does my solution have that built in? Does my solution think that this is really important? Is it a priority for them, like it's a priority for me? Another thing is just around microservices. Almost a lot of organizations work with microservices, and you have to think about like, how do I automate testing for all of those services? How do I integrate them? How do I know that all of them are working? And if they fail, like, do I get any alerting? Do I get any help from my CI/CD pipeline to tell me like, oh, one of these services is not working very well? And sometimes, that just takes a lot more integrations. So on the right side here, you have so many different tools related to your day-to-day work, right? When we work with applications, we work with so many different things. We work with the language itself, the runtime, so like Python, Java, C, whatever it is, JavaScript. We have to work with those languages. And then we also have to work with the artifact repositories. Like we have to store them somewhere. We have to version them. We have to secure them, vulnerability scanning. We also have to deploy them. So how do we orchestrate deployments, right? How do we orchestrate infrastructure provisioning? How do we provision the right services that needs to be there in our environment? So there's a lot of different aspects, right? And then there's also the part where you want to better understand an application that's already running. So I have an application, like maybe I want to use OpenTelemetry. I want to use App Dynamics. I want to use Datadog. I want to use Splunk. Using those tools and harnessing the information from that is really important, especially if you want to say like, this is a normal deployment or this is not a normal deployment. That's a really big question that people have. Like new developers, they'll say like, how do I know if a deployment is good or bad? And maybe your platform can answer some of those questions for you because it has a log of what's good, what's bad, right? And so this is actually how Harness works. It's a little bit different from how other solutions work, but I just wanted to share like, it's possible to integrate a lot of those providers and solutions. You just install what's called a Harness delegate into your environment, and then it'll communicate outward. It'll communicate. Your Harness manager will communicate to that delegate. It's one-way traffic, and it'll delegate tasks to that delegate to perform. And so you can automate your deployments and things like that. And so I know I covered a lot of topics. I'm not sure if we had any additional questions. If not, I can continue to this part of the presentation where, I just kind of share, like, how should you be thinking about software delivery? How should you be thinking about DevOps? If you do want to figure out where do I start? I'm assuming we don't have any questions.
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry. You showed Harness has two parts. One part is a managed console or management stuff, and the other part is our agents. I can say the agents, delegates are agents from Harness. Could you please explain a little bit about this configuration? This application, Harness application, is deployed on a cloud, or it's only deployed over GCP? The second point, these delegates are agents, where we should deploy these delegates, these agents, those agents. Could you please explain a little bit about this?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So with the Harness delegates, you're right. It is. It's like an agent. It dishes out the work. It's basically the orchestrator, right? It orchestrates everything, and so you can deploy it to a lot of different environments. So depending on what environment you want, you can download the delegate and deploy it. So it works on GCP, Azure, AWS. It even works on OpenShift. It works in bare metal. It works for any container orchestrator environments as well. So you can deploy it to your Minikube instance. You can deploy it to a Kubernetes cluster. Essentially, it's just a bunch of files, deployable files where you can install that delegate onto your cluster. And typically, you just want to deploy it into it needs privilege. It needs privileged access. So you install it into like your Kubernetes cluster, and if that Kubernetes cluster, you just need to give it permissions so that it can run everything within that cluster. But that's all you need to do, and it just requires we say 8 gigs of RAM. You can basically run it for less of that, and then some disk space. and it automatically provides the connections that you need. So once you put this into, like, for example, your AWS environment, you can basically build workflows and pipelines to deploy anything into your AWS environments. So it's really nice. And again, like, we're a SaaS, but we also support on-prem solutions. So if you are only based on-prem and you want to do an on-prem install, we also support that. So yeah, but our most common one is the software as a service. So it's fairly easy to just log into the to a user interface, and then look at the status of your deployments, trigger any deployments, create any pipelines that you want. If you want to work with the API to do like any batch creations of anything that you want to have, then you can. We have the API. We have an API based in GraphQL, and then we also have. I lost my train of thought. we have GraphQL, and then you can also import or export any YAML configurations. So if you want to import anything, any configurations that you have, you can bring it into the Harness platform, and it's easy. Or alternatively, if you just want to grab any of the deployment YAMLs or change them up, you can do that as well. So if you're more comfortable working with code than with the user interface, it's totally up to you. We support a lot of it, and that's kind of the nice thing is, like, we're not trying to tell you how to build your pipelines. We're giving you all the capabilities for it. We're pretty agnostic in terms of, like, where do you want to deploy to? What do you want to use to deploy? We just help kind of support these integrations out of the box. So it's not like you have to install anything. It's not like you have to really manage anything. You just drop in some of your logins and credentials and connect them, and then you can revoke access whenever you want. You can also control who has access to what. So maybe you don't want your developers making pipelines. That's fine. We actually have role-based access control. So specific people within your organization, you don't want them to have access to something, they won't have access to it. And so it's all controllable through that user interface. Great question.
Tiffany, great. Tiffany, from the perspective, we have two questions. I will pass for you. Just one question more. It's about this size application harness deployed. For example, if you have harness application deployed over GCP, maybe as your graphic, your image, and it's possible use delegates to manage multi-cloud. For example, from one console, harness console, application console, I can manage deployments. I can manage CD over AWS, Oracle Cloud, for example, Azure, through the same console of harness that was deployed over Google GCP, for example. It's possible.
Yeah, it's possible. So you have one user interface, and then you can have multiple delegates. So you're multi-cloud, right? Maybe you have OpenShift and AWS and Pivotal. Well, then I would just install a delegate on each one of them, and then it'll automatically detect, like, oh, I have a bunch of different cloud providers. And then so when you go and build the pipelines, you can say, like, this is the pipeline to deploy to this environment, to this environment, and this environment. Or maybe you have one pipeline that says all of these environments. So yeah, it's just you have one harness manager, and then you have multiple delegates. And it's kind of nice because you can have multiple teams, right? Like, one team only has access to one environment, so that's the only one that they add.
Great. The question is, how many times you need for install, delegate, and do the first deployment over Kubernetes? How many times to deploy the delegate and start to do the first deployment over Kubernetes?
Oh, how much time does it take?
How about that? Yes.
Okay. I've done it in 30 minutes. But like for a lot of our customers and like what we promise to our customers is like you can install harness, get set up in under 5 hours. So you know, like when I first joined Harness, we had to do training, and I got the delegate installed into the environment, set everything up, created a pipeline in 30 minutes. And it's easy. So we have a lot of demos and training to help you as well. We also have documentation. So docs.harness.io will share how to get started. You can get started really quickly. The installation of the delegate doesn't take that long. Like I deployed the delegate to a Minikube on my laptop, and I think I only had to wait for like 10 minutes for it to show up. It's fairly light. It again depends on your environment, but yeah, getting start. You know, you can log into the harness architecture anytime, and you can actually build pipelines even though you haven't connected everything. So maybe like you don't have credentials to all of your tools. Okay, I can just add that later. You can still build the pipeline though. So that's just if you're looking to get really like try harness for free or get it started really quickly, that's one thing you can do. You can also actually try harness for free for like 30 days and then it gets converted to a free forever version. It's limited for how many deployments you can do. But yeah, if you go to harness.io, you can try it out and play with it too. I recommend that because it's like super easy to get started. I would say it's like easier than any other solution that's out there. Sometimes you have to read a lot, you have to code, you have to figure out like what their language is, how to write it in their language. But with Harness, it's so easy. You just click around, build whatever you need. Like we give you the capabilities to be as picky or as specific as you want, and that's kind of like our goal. We're not trying to tell you like this is how you build a pipeline. We just give you all the tools to be able to put together what you want and what you need for your specific use case. And if we miss anything, more than happy to keep track of it and also escalate it. We have a harness community, so if you have any questions, like myself and other community members keep track of it.
Excellent. You answered the second question. There was about the if you how can we test? How can we try? How can we try the harness? So you answered there is a trial, and after that you have a free free version with limit capabilities. Right? It's this. Okay, excellent. The second question. Okay, let's go. Go ahead. That's the second part.
Awesome. Great questions, everybody. Super excited. This is the second part of the presentation. You may be asking, like, wow, there's a lot of things I have to think about around continuous delivery and software delivery. There's also a lot of concepts around DevOps. If you've seen any of the cloud native CNCF stuff, there's a lot of solutions out there. So, you know, how do I even pick one? How do I know it's viable for my organization? And, you know, do you have any tips around that? I think it's always pretty challenging to be in the space because it's always growing, right? And really to answer that question, the slides are out of order. To answer that question, I really try to think about it in three aspects, right? The people, the process, and the technologies, right? And these three things have to work together, right? You can't just think about the technology alone because at the end of the day, someone has to use it and there has to be a process around it, right? You can't just do whatever you want with this new cool technology that we have. How do you know, like there's a lot of questions around that. And so I just try to think about it as in terms of people, process, technologies. And to summarize sort of the different things that you want to think about, when you're thinking about people, you want to think about, well, if I'm going to introduce a new process or a new technology, do they know enough to be able to follow with that new technology or new process, right? It's about what they know. So I try to think about it in terms of knowledge, right? Do you need a lunch and learn? Do you need enablement? Do you need a course, a teaching? You know, do you need documentation? Sometimes you just need those things because new processes and new technologies are always coming out, right? We have new patterns, new practices. And so you need to be able to level up the people that are in your organization or bring in additional talent and skills to the team so that you can support new new technologies and new processes. And so that's something that we really try to help with too. And it's something that you should think about if you're going to adopt a new CD capability, or you're going to introduce a new technology. And then in terms of technology, you want to think about, well, what are the current platforms that I have today? What are the things where I can't change, right? Maybe you're stuck in a cloud and you can't change that cloud. Well, then now all of my tools and integrations have to be related to that cloud. Maybe you don't want to be stuck to a cloud and you have multiple clouds. Well, are there other tools where you just can't give it up and you need it to be integrated into your tools or into your platform? Just something to think about. For some people, like, the platform that they're stuck on is Kubernetes. That's all they're going to use. So now all of their integrations and all their tools, that's number one priority. And that's how they evaluate technologies. So just something to think about is, like, if you do adopt a platform, what does that mean? In some cases, like, people adopt CD solutions like Spinnaker, and then they're stuck. They're like, oh, well, it doesn't work with this cloud, or it doesn't work with this solution. So now I have to build my own tool or build my own integration. So there's something to think about, right? That's something I think about a lot too, is like, what if Harness only supported Kubernetes deployments or only supported one cloud? It basically just wouldn't work for other people, and that leaves people out, right? So just something to think about in terms of technology. And then finally, around processes is like, okay, how are you integrating them with your people and also integrating them with your technologies? So just think that, like, whenever you have processes and you have to define processes, it's pretty formal, right? It's like steps that you have to follow. And so it always usually involves some sort of change. So you have to be able to explain, like, why do we want to do things in a certain way? Why do we care about a certain practice or a certain pattern for software delivery? If you just say, like, oh, there's this pattern, oh, canary deployments, and you don't explain why, people are going to lose that, and you're not going to have the same impact as you would otherwise. And that's kind of how I like to think about DevOps, is just like the people, process, and technologies. If you're missing one, then you're going to have some problems trying to figure out, how do I want to make this change? How do I want to continue delivering value to my customers? And also, at the end of the day, you care about your coworkers, you care about your team, you care about doing really great stuff. And why should you have to sacrifice any of that just because of a technology or because of a process or because of some decision that we made that didn't, sit well with other people? And so I actually like giving this, there's a version of a talk that I like to do, and it's around CD, data-driven CD, data-driven continuous delivery. And so I talk about the different KPIs, the different key performance indicators, and the different metrics that you can use to track, like, how is your continuous delivery? How are you doing things? Like, are your changes valuable to your users? How ready is it? How agile are you being? How stable are you being with your deployments? So these are all kinds of things that you want to think about. I liked including this because it's always something to think about. Is like, oh, okay, we're not going to change things for the sake of changing things. So let's think about, like, let's be intentional, right? Let's think about, like, why do we want to change things? Let's make these decisions based off of data, based off of pain points, based off of reasons that matter, not just for the sake of changing things, because things change enough as it is already. And so, yeah, if you were to ask yourself, like, where should I start? How should I even think about, like, pain points? I kind of like to group it into 4 different categories. So, you can have a pain point around not moving fast enough. So, your biggest pain point could be like, hey, we have a migration and it's taking a really long time and we're not delivering value. You can also say, like, hey, our developers, they code, but the changes don't come out for like another 3 months or 4 months. We don't see those changes. And so developers don't get to make a big impact. You could also say, like, oh, we can't onboard enough applications fast enough, and our time to market is bad. So that could be like the biggest pain point, right? And maybe you say, like, oh, I want to automate my processes more. On the flip side, like maybe you don't care about velocity. Maybe it doesn't matter that you deploy every day or on demand. But what matters most is governance. Like, do we have access to our deployments? Do we care? Can we see who deployed what and where and why? With Harness, you get to see all of that information, so it's really helpful. Like you can see who triggered a deployment, to what environment, what time. You can even go into the dashboard and see it running, like what stage it's in. You can pause deployments, that kind of thing. So for some people, like that's the most important thing, and that can be like their make or break feature, right? And so you should start asking questions around like, how do you standardize deployments? Do you have role-based access control? That kind of thing. Do you work with specific secrets managers? Just something to think about. And then another part is like risks related to software delivery. Do we have enough quality gates? Is the software that we release like, if we mess up, like how many people does it impact? Is the performance of our application the most important thing? There's a lot of risk in delivering a new feature, right? And if there is, that may be your biggest pain point, right? If you're constantly asking questions about the quality of software, about the availability of software, maybe like throughput matters a lot and latency matters a lot. So like those metrics and availabilities matter a lot to you. You should be thinking about like, how can CI/CD help me with that, right? So for some people, that's the biggest thing. And then for other people, like maybe they care about velocity and efficiency, or maybe they care about risk and efficiency. Like you can care about all of these things as well, but it's always really helpful to figure out like, what specifically do I care about? For some people, it's efficiency. They're spending a lot in the cloud because they're deploying every day. Maybe they provision a lot of infrastructure and they're paying for it and it's expensive and they don't get any visibility into what's contributing to those cloud costs. So we actually have a product that helps with that. It's called Continuous Efficiency, and it works with Harness continuous delivery to help drive down cloud costs. So you can actually see based off of your deployments, like, how much are you paying per cluster, per application, per service? You can actually break it down, and you can't actually do that in other public cloud services. You typically have to tag resources, right? You have to create budgets, but with continuous efficiency, you can actually get all of that information without tagging. And then we actually also have recommendations. So maybe you have instance of Prometheus and you made it too big, or like you have a Jenkins server and it's too big, like you gave it 8 gigs of RAM, but it only uses 2 at most. So continuous efficiency will actually look at all of the workloads in your cluster and tell you like, hey, you should right size this. You should set like memory limits and resource limits on this. And these are the numbers that you should set them to. And so that's really, really helpful because, when you're working with a new technology, you don't know how much resources it's going to consume, and sometimes you don't know for a long time. And so when you get that bill and you have to pay for all the resources that you're not using, right, it's waste. And so that's why we call it continuous efficiency, because we're really trying to make the workloads efficient. So I'm going to pause there. We're near the end. I don't have much to go over left, but I'm more than happy to answer any other questions that we have.
Again, no, don't have questions now.
Yes. Got it. Awesome. I know we're nearing up on time, but I do just want to share like 3 more slides. And these are closing slides. Like this summarizes a lot of the opportunities that continuous delivery has, right, in the space. Like we have the opportunity to use continuous delivery and continuous integration to deliver value, and not just deliver it, but also do it faster, safer, cheaper, and also like repeatably, right, across all of our organizations and different teams. So I think that's one of the exciting things about investing into software delivery, or even talking about kind of the ecosystem, right? Is because we really are trying to make things better. And so the main takeaway here for this presentation is like, yeah, identify those pain points, right? And then using those pain points, like figure out what technologies do I want to introduce, right? How do we start like benchmarking a lot of these aspects, right? How do we mark success? Maybe success to us in 5 months is that we don't take 2 weeks to onboard an application, or we don't, or maybe we build a platform, or have a platform or a solution that can work with multiple clouds, multiple platforms, right? So really like figure out how you want to tackle that journey, and start with one area of continuous delivery at a time, right? Maybe you say like this one team will focus on this one aspect of continuous delivery, making like infrastructure provisioning better, or this person will focus on verification, the automating verification with AI or ML ops, right? That's that's kind of an upcoming topic that people are talking about. Maybe you even figure out, well, how does Helm work with my processes? How does Open Policy Agent, um, any other tool that we have, how does that work with our CI/CD pipeline? Does it make sense if it's part of our CI/CD pipeline? These are all kind of cool questions to think about. And so I hope that this presentation was really helpful in kind of getting your mind around the topic, and figuring out like, where do I want to start, and what are the cool things that I want to try and do in the space. I think like the next year will be really interesting, especially because more companies and organizations are providing CD platforms, right? Continuous delivery platforms for people to use. And so it's a fair game, and this competition is really good because we're really building like better software for people to use. And so it's not just like Amazon or Google that can deploy on demand. It's also like the new startup, or the new or like the small companies, right? Or maybe even the Fortune 500 companies where, things move slowly and you want them to move faster, right? And safer. So it's just something to think about, is like, what does it mean in the next couple of months, where we talk about ML, AI ops, we talk about progressive delivery, we talk about feature flag management. There's a lot of really cool things in the space, and I think it's worth investing in. And so I hope this presentation was a good one to help cover a lot of the talking points, so that you can kind of share with your teams and make software delivery better. That's the end of my presentation, actually. So I really appreciate coming on here and speaking with you all and interacting with you all. I hope, to see you all around sometime soon. If you want to reach out to me, my email is on here. I'm also on Twitter. So if you have any questions, want to connect, whatever it may happen to be, more than happy to be a resource for you all. But thank you so much for joining.
Sorry, I was mute. Sorry, was amazing presentation. Thank you so much. You said about the many things the this will be very interesting, because you think that you can see many new companies, new products, and so on. And you said about I have a doubt. I never heard about progressive delivery. What's this progressive delivery?
Yeah, I think it's something that GitLab has been talking about a lot more recently in the space, but it's this idea that you progressively roll out your software deployment or software delivery to a subset of users. So it actually involves a couple of different things, and there are different ways to implement it. But one common way is to do blue-green deployments, canary deployments. It also includes feature flag management, which is like a way of you hiding things behind a certain flag. So you can turn off and on that flag, and people will be able to see that feature or they won't be able to see it. And it's kind of a cool way to make sure that your feature branches don't get too old, right? You can still include like merge back your features into the main branch, but just hide it behind a feature flag. So you can turn off that feature flag and make sure that no one sees it. So it's kind of cool. That's why they call it progressive delivery. It's kind of new language. I'm not sure how much it'll like gain traction, but it is like one way people kind of talk about progressive delivery, and I think we're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into that capability eventually. I'm not sure what people will call it, but it's kind of it sounds cool. I like it.
Thank you. From the perspective of CD Foundation, how can you see the how this foundation doing this job of spread the continuous delivery or progressive delivery, no matter, but these concepts and projects and spread this word. Likewise, CNCF are doing from the perspective of cloud native projects, from the perspective of continuous delivery umbrella. How can you see the role of CD Foundation?
Yeah, well, I definitely think that there's a big need for it, right? We all need to come together and say like, these are the different problems that we're solving through continuous delivery. These are how we're doing it, right? People just need to learn more about the space. Like when we talk about continuous delivery, a lot of people don't know that it has all of these components, right? Around verification, around rollback, around release strategies. Like they know that they have to do this work. They know that it's part of the release cycle, right? It's part of the software development lifecycle, but they don't necessarily associate it with continuous delivery. And so being able to even just talk about it and have people know about it is really big. And apart from that, like having the communities and having like different stakeholders be a part of the conversation is really important, because at the end of the day we need to standardize on common language. We need to establish these like practices for other people, right? And that's how I see like a lot of the different communities existing. Like that's their only purpose, right? They're there to serve like the end consumers, the people that are trying to solve for software delivery, the people that are delivering software. So that's kind of how I see it. There's a lot of really great events. There's a lot of also working groups, special interest groups around CD that can help with some of the language and some of the content, some of the things that you need to think about in terms of this. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I recommend anyone checking out the Continuous Delivery Foundation if you haven't already. If you haven't seen any of the stuff already, there's blogs, videos, podcasts, everything.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tiffany. Tiffany, it was a really amazing presentation, amazing moment. Thank you so much for helping us starting this community in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And we have people from Portugal here too, together with us. And really, it's amazing to have you give your time to us. Thank you so much. I really want to invite you again next year to uh, continue delivering this amazing message for us and showing harness and the evolution of harness and your participation in continuous delivery community. Thank you so much, Tiffany. And I really want to have you again with us, if possible.
Yeah, of course. I loved being here. Thank you all for your questions and amazing feedback. I really appreciate it. I hope to see you all one day in person. That would be really awesome. I hope everyone's enjoying their day.
Thank you, Tiffany. See you next year. I hope. And have a great year end, a great Christmas, a great New Year, because this year that are at the end was very challenging for everyone. I hope we can have a next one very blessed. Thank you so much, Tiffany. See you.
Thank you, Paulo. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye bye. Pessoal, para mim foi muito legal essa apresentação da Tiffany. Ela falou sobre muitos conceitos legais, falou sobre produto, né, sobre essa plataforma do Harness, vale a pena testar, falou sobre a CD Foundation e o que deve vir aí para frente, 2021, esperamos que venha muita coisa legal nesse cenário, né? Volta de convidar vocês para fazer parte do nosso meetup, né, do nosso encontro. Espero, eu vou colocar aqui o link, né, para vocês poderem tá acionando aí, né, para botei aqui no chat, colocar aqui também no banner, para que vocês possam, né, vir aqui encontrar a gente, né? Então tá lá o Meetup CD Delivery, Continuous Delivery Rio, né? O que a gente está fazendo? Na verdade, o que a gente está querendo fazer é trazer o máximo possível, né, da CD Foundation, né? Eu vou botar o site aqui também para vocês verem, aqui, ó, CD Foundation, trazer o máximo disso, né, de quem participa, dos embaixadores. Hoje a gente teve a Tiffany. Daqui a 2 semanas, a gente, se Deus quiser, tudo correr bem, a gente vai ter a Tracy Reagan. Queria fazer a nossa abertura, mas a gente teve um problema de confuso. Fuso horário, não é confuso, também é confusão de fuso horário, e a gente acabou tendo esse problema, mas vamos trazê-la de volta aqui e pedir a vocês para que nos ajude a divulgar, né? Chamar os amigos, né, a participar de discussões lá no Meetup. Coloca lá questões, coloca lá itens que vocês gostariam de ver, que a gente vai buscar, né? Então, a gente está começando trazendo esses speakers, né, esses palestrantes internacionais, como a Tiffany da Harness. Mas por quê? Porque essa fundação tem um ano, né? Tem um ano. E claro, tem muita gente que fala de Spinnaker, tem muita gente que fala aqui no Brasil de Jenkins, sem dúvida nenhuma, e a gente vai buscar todo mundo trazer esse conhecimento, mas para começar a gente quis trazer um pouquinho do Summit da CD Foundation que ocorreu mês passado, desses palestrantes espetaculares que são ambassadors da Fundação, trazer um pouquinho desse gostinho, e aí, no decorrer do tempo, ano que vem, né, esse ano a gente vai terminar provavelmente vai ter a Tracy e possivelmente a gente vai ter o Mark, mas não está certo ainda, mas a Tracy, se Deus quiser, daqui a 2 semanas, e a gente vai tentar fazer o ano que vem trazendo aí nas aplicações aqui no Brasil, quem puder contribuir com a gente, tá? Encontro sobre Continuous Delivery baseado na CD Foundation, da mesma forma que a gente faz lá no Cloud Native Talks Brasil, que é baseado no Cloud Native Computer Foundation. A gente está trazendo aí essa ideia da Continuous Delivery Foundation. Pessoal, eu agradeço muito a vocês, eu sei que todo mundo está saco cheio de live, mas assim, não tem jeito, conhecimento a gente tem que compartilhar, e temos que fazer de algum jeito, e o jeito hoje que a gente tem é esse de fazer via live, né? O bom é que a gente fica com ele gravado e fica com ele, dá para assistir outra vez, e ninguém precisa sair de casa de noite, etc, etc. Mas um dia, quem sabe, a gente volta a ter os encontros locais, mas não vamos perder essa pegada não, porque eu achei super espetacular poder alcançar, por exemplo, meu amigo Ronaldo, que está em Portugal, a essa hora já bem tarde lá, mas ele está aqui conosco, né? E prestigiando esse trabalho, né? Junto com a gente. Na verdade, esse trabalho a gente está fazendo juntos, né? E ele está aqui prestigiando lá de Portugal, e isso é maravilhoso. Se fosse só local, né? Se fosse só aqui no Rio de Janeiro, tá, nunca seria possível fazer isso. Ter esse meu amigo lá de Portugal, meu irmão lá de Portugal aí participando. E todos que participaram aqui, eu agradeço muito. Fiquem com Deus, que todos fiquem salvos, protegidos, que Deus abençoe a cada um, e vamos para o próximo, se Deus quiser, daqui a 2 semanas. Um grande abraço e estamos juntos, pessoal. Tchau, tchau.